caught a little night streaming. Let's go. All right, that was Rooks G. You guys were almost ready here. Memorial Day. It's a holiday. Get a little night riding here. ASMR Red Bull. That's right. Ready? We call that a little night ride from Rooks G. Check. Toast. That's right. Toast. My frames are going all over the place. Yo, let's get after it. Yo, what's up, y'all? Let's do a little Brad Pitt streaming tonight. We're going to do some analysis of 2 American films and a foreign film. Yo, what's up, Crystalline? What's up, everybody in the chat? My frames are going all over the place. Internet has been crazy here, and there's a big storm outside. So if I drop, it'll probably come back in. But let's go. We're gonna do some Brad Pitt streaming tonight. I thought it would be good. You know, I watched 2 films that I haven't watched. I can't believe I've never seen these movies. I can believe I haven't seen one of them for a specific reason, really. But tonight we're gonna do 7 Years in Tibet, Legends of the Fall, and the Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Okay? Those are our 3 Brad Pitt streams. That's part of our trilogy tonight. Now, Brad Pitt's done a lot of movies. A lot of bangers. I mean, people in the chat are putting down all the movies that he's done. Fight Club, 12 Monkeys, Ocean's 12 is my Ocean's 12 is my favorite of the Ocean's movies. Johnny Suede, Cool World. Remember he played Floyd in True Romance? True Romance is awesome. Meet Joe Black is good. I mean, it is. It's an interesting movie to watch. So, Spy Game, of course. I've never seen A River Runs Through It. Never seen it. So the 2 movies that Seven, of course. Yes, thank you, Jethro. 7. The 2 movies of Brad Pitt that I've never seen are A River Runs Through It and Legends of the Fall. So I decided to do Legends of the Fall because shouts out to my friend Andrew because Andrew Healy, my friend Heel Dog, because we were talking as we do. We talk into the night. We were on the phone. My homeboy lives in Chicago now. We were talking, and yeah, he's in Snatch, and he said, dude, his exact response. This is what he said. He said, dude, Legends of the Fall, and I was like, nah, man, that movie's gay. And he was like, nah, man, trust me, dude. Just watch the movie. You think it is, but just watch it. So I gave it a shot, and I watched it. And I got to say, it fits the theme of what we're doing tonight because it's World War I. I couldn't remember the difference between A River Runs Through It and Legends of the Fall. A River Runs Through It came out in 1992. Legends of the Fall came out in 1994. I didn't see either one. I remember the Rolling Stone cover of Brad Pitt with the hair, and this was before Interview with the Vampire, and I just didn't want to watch. I just thought it was going to be gray, or whatever. I thought it was going to be kind of Skittles, and I guess maybe it's good that I watched it later in life because it's a pretty decent. It's decent. In fact, the movie is pretty solid up until a certain point, and then it kind of goes wrong. So we're gonna discuss that and the assassination of Jesse James, which is a totally different type of movie, but has a horse theme. It's horseback riding. It's 19th century. River runs. Legends of the Fall goes into World War I, and then of course 7 Years in Tibet. I didn't see that. I remember seeing the poster for 7 Years in Tibet when I was at the West Tower Cinema, and I saw the big poster, and I was annoyed at the time because it came out just a few months before Martin Scorsese's movie Kundun, which both of which are about the Dalai Lama. As Norm Macdonald says, who cares what the Dalai Lama thinks? That's what Norm said. So I didn't care about either one of those, and I didn't care about it, but I decided to go back and watch. And I was not disappointed. I haven't seen A River Runs Through It because it's Robert Redford, and Brad Pitt have a lot of similar. Brad Pitt is kind of he's older now, but he's sort of the neo Robert Redford. And also remember shouts out to our friend TGF out there, Green Feathers. His brother is best friends with Brad Pitt's son, of all people. So that's pretty cool. I forgot that he was married to Jennifer Aniston. That was a huge deal. He was married to her for like 6 years. Yeah, Spy Game. I did an analysis of Spy Game. You remember that? Because that was in the 6 Days of the Condor book, 3 Days of the Condor, Sneakers, Spy Game analysis that we did. That was like a year ago. But so let's do this. Let's drop in because I'm gonna be doing a couple of literary streams coming up, pure literary streams. So I thought I would just do one more movie stream here because it's Bank Holiday Monday. Good afternoon, you lovely people. I'm out here grafting. It's a Bank Holiday Monday. That's our friend Tom Skinner. Not we don't know him, but. Shouts out to Block Party out there. I love Tom Skinner. Love watching his positive posting on Instagram. But later this week, probably Wednesday, I'll be doing HHHH by Laurent Binet, and that'll be a totally different kind of stream because it's all about Heydrich and the Big Dub Part 2 and those bad people in World War II. So we're going to talk about Heydrich. So this one's totally different. And I thought I started with Legends of the Fall because I knew. Let me take these out. I started Legends of the Fall because I knew it would be somewhat war themed. Today's Veterans Day for all the TAC 1, Mac V SOG, meme war veterans out there. No, but it's Memorial Day, so I thought, I would do one about the war. Right. California, great movie, Juliette Lewis. He did another movie with Juliette Lewis way before that, a TV movie. And he also had that movie with Ricky Schroeder. So I like Brad Pitt. So the reason, let me read you this quote. And you know what? Let's start with 7 Years in Tibet because I want to read this quote that I got I was reading through the IMDb and Brad Pitt. So here's what he said. Now I like this. This really made me Green Feathers. He's just living his life. He's out there living his life. Don't worry about him. All right. So, but yeah, let's think of him. Pray for him. So. TGF, that's all right. That's my old friend. So, all right. So, here's what Brad Pitt said. It says, when questioned about his stance on the China-Tibet problem by Time magazine, Brad Pitt replied, "Who cares what I think China should do about Tibet? I'm a fucking actor. I'm a grown man who puts on makeup." Now, that is exactly the sentiment that I expressed, and specifically talking about Richard Burton. I've mentioned this a number of times. Remember how Richard Burton talked about how he was so lucky to be an actor? He was surprised all of his relatives are slate miners in Wales, and that he couldn't believe that he was able to essentially he said basically all actors are Skittles in the sense that they wear, they put on costumes, try on clothes, and wear makeup. And, he's right about that. It's a crazy thing to be to have as a profession. I tried my hand at the profession. I trained as an actor for 2 years at classical acting in England at a prestigious school, and I did my run. Of course, I don't like what's it's the industry is not what it's what you guys think it is, right? But I don't want any of that. So I like that Brad Pitt expressed that sentiment. I thought that was really cool. I thought that was that was surprising for especially a major Hollywood actor, because they love expressing their opinions on politics, and maybe that's changed over the years. I don't really know if it has changed with Brad Pitt. Now I know he's probably a donor. I know he was a donor to Obama and Larry Sinclair. I know he was a donor to them and all that stuff, and Hollywood and all that, But I can't remember him ever making overt like political commercials. Maybe he did. Circle G says Fury is also great. Fury is great. Fury is a great movie. Fury is a great movie because it has John Bernthal and my new favorite Shia LaBeouf in it. And I really like that movie. That would have been a good one to do for today, but I decided, and I'm kind of discuss that in relation to his career and some of his other movies. But so what happened with Brad Pitt is this, and I know this from a anecdotal. This is sort of an anecdotal thing that I heard when I lived in Belfast. So the story about Brad Pitt was that he was in all of his movies, and he was the handsomest man in the world and all that stuff. And he was in all these movies where he's a kind of a male model. By the way, another movie I've never seen, Thelma and Louise. I've never seen Thelma and Louise. I've never been interested in it. This might sound weird, but I don't like movies that it's like about two ladies in a car. And that doesn't really appeal to me. I know it's Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott produced the assassination of Jesse James. He produced that. It's also his production company, Plan B, which also did Killing Them Softly, which is a great movie. I really like that movie. That's the Brad Pitt movie that was made in like 2012. That's a good one where he plays the hitman. James Gandolfini. I think it's James Gandolfini's last role or one of his last roles. But what the story was that when he was in Dublin doing research for his movie The Devil's Own, he walked into a neighborhood. Oh no, he was filming filming Devil's Own in Dublin because they had to film movies about the Troubles in Dublin. They couldn't do it in Belfast because, number one, the Good Friday Agreement, I don't think it occurred yet when they filmed the movie, and also they didn't film movies there. It was obviously too politically hot and too hot with paramilitaries to make movies there, so they had to film them in Dublin. So, but he did go up to Belfast, and I think he wandered like into the Falls, which is a nationalist neighborhood there. And and the story was that I heard from someone at the time, this was like a well-known story in Belfast, that he wandered into the Falls and he was doing research and he said, "I'm Brad Pitt, I'm an actor," and he got he got roughed up a little bit. So after that, he noticed that his next movie, he started doing movies where he played a tough guy. Of course, he was in Snatch, and he played a tough, sort of Tyson Fury-esque guy, right? And he did Fight Club after that. So he started to do roles where one thing that Hollywood actors do is they try to gain credibility by making themselves ugly. Okay. And what I mean is that Leo has done this consistently. The fact that sometimes Hollywood actors don't understand that acting is not portraying a tough guy where you have to make yourself ugly or crying. Those two things those are normal variations of acting, but that doesn't count for you becoming a complete actor. And Leo has done this. I like Leo, but he's done this. I mean, I've really liked him. I think it's done now. Maybe he'll come out. Maybe his role with Paul Thomas Anderson will be a comedic role, and that's where I think I've said that a few times that I think that's where he should go. But it doesn't matter. I don't really care. But with Brad Pitt, he made it obvious. There's an obvious change. There's an obvious shift in his career because even in The Devil's Own, he's playing a sort of a Sean Miller type of character from Patriot Games, right? It's an IRA movie, and it's set in America with the they're buying weapons in America, and so he obviously goes into that realm, and then he's sort of stuck with that through time. He's also not afraid to make fun of himself, which I really like. I really like his roles in Ocean's 12 and Burn After Reading, because those are both funny. Especially Burn After Reading. I think that's probably one of his best roles because he's playing an idiot, and I think that's really cool for him. I think that's funny. So let's start with 7 Years in Tibet. Heinrich Harrer. And one of the things that's crazy about going back and reading reviews, contemporary reviews from the release of the movies, is that they oftentimes are either totally wrong about the movie or they're looking at it through the lens of a political statement. Now, obviously, 7 Years in Tibet is a political movie. It's political on the face of it. It's about the Chinese aggression post World War II in Tibet, but they're also looking at it in light of contemporary favor in terms of these things. So remember that in the 90s, Tibet became a huge political cause. I was just listening to the song Shambhala and Bodhisattva Vow from Beastie Boys, Ill Communication. And I really like those two songs. I've never really cared about especially anything political dealing with any of that. And I also I just never really cared about anything like that. But I do like the songs on the Beastie Boys albums. And they were obviously very, the Free Tibet concerts and all that. I don't really care about that. But I do like the songs because the two songs are it's almost like you're listening to Dune, but it's the Tibetan monks, and all that stuff. But I like heavy songs, and I can listen to the song without buying into the spiritual notions of the pro-Tibet songs. But also Richard Gere, PC mentions Richard Gere for his pro-Tibet stance. Well, so was Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt was not allowed in China for a number of years. He did go there in 2016 to promote a movie. I don't remember which movie it was, but he's allowed back in. But for all that time, he was, and you can see why. If there's a Chinese Tibet thing happening, just if I'm an idiot talking about this and I know nothing about the political thing, I would go, oh yeah, well I can see why China, if they can censor movies and censor, the Western movies being shown there, I can see why they would censor this movie, because it's a pro-Tibet movie. It's Heinrich Harrer's 7 Years in Tibet, and it's about the early life of the Dalai Lama. I have a friend who would always go, Dalai Lama! In 5th grade, whenever the math teacher called his name, he would say, Dalai Lama! 12th son of the Lama, flowing robes, striking. So, Richard Gere, though, I think is the one who actually passed the script onto the Dalai Lama, because he knows him. This was back in the 90s, and so he's the one who greenlit the making of the movie. Not that they needed that, but he was the one who passed that on to them. So here's what happens in 7 Years in Tibet. This is a true story, and one of the things that the contemporary reviews talks about is they say Brad Pitt isn't the gentle giant that the movie portrays, finding redemption in Tibet and living his life through World War II and mountain climbing. He was actually an SS Obersturmbannführer and was active in that particular group and was a party member. And that has been revealed because it's the 90s. Well, I feel like that wasn't a reveal. All they needed to do was look into it a little bit, or even just watch the movie, and they would understand that, because he alludes to that. His character alludes to that in the movie. And also, that really doesn't, I don't want to say it has nothing to do with the story, because it does, but it's kind of irrelevant in terms of his arc in the story, because that's his whole purpose for what he does after he escapes from this this POW camp. So here's what happens. So the movie begins with Brad Pitt looking like an Urian, full-on mountain climbing gear, Al Crowley style, going to the train with his wife, And there's something going on with his wife. We don't know the relationship, but it looks rocky. And he says, I'll be back in 4 months. And gets on the train. She leaves. And he tells Horst, his adjutant or his assistant, he tells him, hey, take care of her while I'm gone. I'll be back in 4 months. Now, we watching the movie. I'd never seen this before, but I know that Horst is going to seriously take care of her because it looks like their relationship is rocky. So what happens is that Brad Pitt joins an expedition with David Thewlis and a couple other guys, and they're going to climb a mountain in the Himalayas, as they call it. And also, another thing is that they all talk about how his Austrian accent is terrible in the movie, and it's not. It's fine. He's an actor, and it doesn't matter. He's not speaking German in the movie. It's an Austrian accent, and it's fine. Now we've watched Vikings and The Last Kingdom, and it's sort of a generic Scandinavian accent, but who cares? Have some, you have a willing suspension of disbelief, and it doesn't matter. I think people just wanted to hate on him at the time, I guess. But what he does is he gets on the train and he's going to climb this mountain. They make a big deal of taking pictures of him at the train station, which is interesting because there's a lot about trains in the assassination of Jesse James, obviously. But I know that's just a tenuous connection, but whatever. He's about to get on the train, and they hand him the swastika thing. They hand him the flag, and he kind of takes it, warily. But he's there for a photo op. And then as we learn about the movie, I mean, if you haven't read the book or you don't know about the movie, and I didn't, then what you learn is that he's famous. He's a famous athlete. He's a famous mountain climber, and that he's going with this expedition to climb this mountain in the Himalayas because the Germans look on this as a point of national pride. And this is pre-1939, and there is a mountain that they call Our Mountain. And this ties in, obviously, with the Himalayan expeditions to Tibet with the finding the Holy Grail, and they did all these expeditions to Tibet, and that's part of why it's sent there. It's also a Goebbels thing where it's German pride, and they see this as outdoorsmanship, and he's going to go climb this mountain, right? And so he goes off, and they get to Tibet. He's an unlikable character, and he's pretty thoroughly unlikable by the rest of his expedition for a number of reasons. But actually what I found watching it was that the reasons that they dislike him are actually reasons why we kind of like him in the movie. He makes it difficult for them, but for all of the right reasons. So for instance, one thing that happens is they get there, they're climbing the mountain, and they're going up. David Thewlis, first of all, Brad Pitt stumbles and injures his leg. It looks like he's broken his leg, but it's bloody, and we see the blood spraying into the snow. He hides it. Now, the other people are not going to like this. We know this because he is compromising their team on the mountain. But we like it because it's showing that he is suffering in silence, and then he's being a man, and then he's going to continue climbing. So he gets up the mountain. David Thewlis slips, and Brad Pitt saves him. And it's precarious. He's hanging off a cliff, and he really does save his life. But when he gets up, when David Thewlis gets back up onto the ledge, he starts fussing at Brad Pitt about the fact that, you should have let me take a look at your leg. You compromised all of our safety. And he says, I just saved your life. I just saved your life. And he says, if you do that one more time, if you do that one more time or put our expedition at risk, I'm going to have to kick you off the team. And Brad Pitt looks at him and says, try it. And I like that. I like that about him. I thought that was cool. I thought that was noble of him to do. I mean, he had just saved the guy's life. So they don't get to summit, and there's a storm that breaks out, and Brad Pitt, of course, wants to keep on going. And then a sort of Al Crowley thing happened. I talked about this in the two Al Crowley streams that we did almost 2 years ago, I guess. Probably 2 years ago. The one about Perturabo and I did a two-part Aleister Crowley stream, and one of them I really focused on some of the mountaineering aspects where Crowley was climbing Kanchenjunga. Was it Chogo-ri? No, Kanchenjunga. There's Kanchenjunga, Chogo-ri, and I don't know which one they're climbing in this, but they were climbing the mountain, this group of English mountaineers, and of course, there's the story about the avalanche that occurs, and Al Crowley told them don't camp over here, and they did, and he set up his tent in a different place. They were all destroyed by the avalanche, and then he supposedly heard their screams, did nothing, and then when he came down off the mountain, the English press had labeled him the wickedest man in the world, right? Well, there's a sort of an aspect that occurs with this where he's trying to tell them, he's trying to be the expedition leader, but they won't let him, and David Thewlis is in charge. Now, you see why David Thewlis is in charge, because he's a sort of a even-keeled, normal character, and it's interesting that he plays a kind of foil to Brad Pitt in the movie and almost goes totally unremembered. But this is going to occur later when a love interest happens by. So as they're coming down off the mountain, they don't summit the mountain. He doesn't get to the peak and become the conquering hero that he wanted to for Germany or for himself. And that is going to set the stage for his character for the rest of the movie, because he is arrogant and he is sort of reckless, but he's also talented and he's there to help them, right? When they're coming down off the mountain, they get arrested by a British expedition by a British officer who's running a team of Gurkhas, and they get put in a truck and taken off to a prison camp, and they say, under what charge? And they say, well, you're on British territory right here. It's officially British territory, and your country has, we've declared war. So World War II breaks out while they're there, and the British officer actually makes a comment about, I hope that, what does he say? He says, you all retreated from the mountain faster than, no, he says, I hope that your country retreats from Poland with the same haste that you retreated from summiting that mountain. And they don't know what the Poland thing is about, but it's because that's occurred while they were summiting, or while they were climbing the mountain. And then they get in this truck, and then immediately Brad Pitt's character tries to escape. He jumps off, and he ends up, they get put in this prison camp, and he ends up trying to escape like 4 different times. And this was noble. This is where the other characters finally ask him for help, because they're going to attempt an actual full escape and get out of the prison camp and try and hike all the way to China, right? They're going to hike to Japanese territory, right? Because of the Axis and because of the Axis at the time, right? So, which is very far away, even though the Japanese are swarming over the Far East. So that works because David Thewlis, though, is saying, you don't try to escape again. You're making it very difficult for us. And that, again, it's like, it's funny when you look at the prison camp in the movie, because they have tins of food, they have nice bunks, they have this nice place where they're living. All the guys are in there together. It's not the bridge on the River Kwai. It's a bunch of sort of celeb mountaineers at a prison camp run by Gurkhas, and it's the opposite of the other side of the prison camp that we see in any other movie or in history. And you're thinking, why are you escaping? David Thewlis is like, why are you trying to escape? You're ruining my tea time and my food and my cards, and I'm about to go play chess with the commandant. So you're really ruining it for us. We're trying to have a good time. But the problem is that Brad Pitt also wants to escape to see his wife, because now when he's on the mountain alone in his tent with the single candle, and there's the avalanche about to come down on him, he sees a picture of his wife, and he's thinking of his wife, and he wants to reconcile with her. But then he finally gets a letter in the prison camp, and the letter is from his wife, and she says she is filing for divorce papers, and she's going to tell their son Rolf, who has just been born, that he died on the expedition, and he'll never know him or never remember his name. And we sort of sensed that this was going to be the problem, because one of the reasons she's mad at him is that he is going on the expedition right at the time that his son is about to be born. But he goes anyway, and this shows his sort of pride and recklessness, and how he is neglecting his family for all this other stuff. But anyway, so they end up escaping, and he goes on his own. But then he reunites with David Thewlis, and they make their way on this long trek through the mountains until they start seeing the Tibetan people, and they make these bets, and Brad Pitt is actually the superior mountaineer and makes the correct bet about where the border is, 38 versus 36 kilometers away. And finally they get to Tibet. But when they get to Tibet, they don't understand that the people, he doesn't understand that they are clapping and sticking out their tongue at him because Tibetans clap to ward away evil spirits, and they say, white devil, white devil. And they don't like, there's no foreigners allowed in Tibet, right? But they end up getting there, and they gain an audience with the regent, because the regent is running Tibet because the 14th Dalai Lama, the flowing robes, striking at the base of this 10,000-foot glacier. And it's the young Dalai Lama that's still alive now. He's just a boy, and he is the reincarnation of the Bodhisattva, or, all the stuff that they say in the movie. So the young Bodhisattva is got a spyglass, and he's looking down on the people, and he sees Brad Pitt's character teaching the Tibetans, because they allow them in, to ice skate. Now, he's been let in because Mako, remember the Japanese, I think he's Japanese actor Mako, who's in a lot of these Japanese movies. He actually was nominated for an Oscar in the Sand Pebbles that I covered a while back. Great Japanese actor. He invites Brad Pitt and David Thewlis into his home, and he gets rebuked admonished by the regent, who says, why would you let these foreigners into your home? And he says, does it determine where a person is from to let them into our home and to do a good deed? So we're supposed to see the differentiation between the humble Tibetans and the outright aggressive Chinese later in the movie, and also the aggression of Brad Pitt's character. And when the Chinese do invade later in the movie, he's going to say, he makes a mention of, he says, there was a time when I would have admired everything that the Chinese are doing right here, all of their tactics, all of their entire mentality dealing with you people. But he's learned by the humility of the people that have brought him in, where he has no food, no water, no clothes. They're poor. They have no country. They're men without country at this time. That they can't be discovered by anybody. They can't get back to Germany. They're persona non grata everywhere. And so he's finally taken in, and so that sort of starts to change him. He also he falls in love, now that he knows he's divorced, he falls in love with this woman that they've sent to give them clothes, to make clothes for them. And she falls in love with David Thewlis. And you sense that that's going to happen watching it, because he is not reckless. I mean, Brad Pitt is obviously, the handsome, celebrity mountaineer, and he's, all this stuff. But David Thewlis is even-keeled and sort of soft-spoken, and so she falls in love with him. He looks like the type of guy who's going to give her a family and not abandon her. And so anyway, she falls in love with him, and Brad Pitt, again, he goes to their house, and he even makes a comment about, do you think this is a smart thing to do? And the woman says something. She says, I'm sorry. I really like this part of the movie. She says, we support our friends, and we wish good for them, and we want to help them in their time of need or in their time of celebration. And I'm sorry that you don't feel that way. You must be terribly lonely inside. And I thought that was really great writing. I'm paraphrasing, but I thought that was really great writing in the movie, because it brought the movie down from the mountains onto a personal level, and it showed the kind of transcendent kindness amongst people that you find in the world. I told you about, when I was in Switzerland, and that old lady who didn't speak any English took me into her cabin and fed me and gave me hot coffee and gave me some stew, and was very nice to me, and I went on my way. I think that's really important. That's an important human thing. So, but then Brad Pitt basically gets a job with the Dalai Lama, the mother. This is 7 Years in Tibet that I'm talking about. The mother of the Dalai Lama, who, let's see, the woman playing her at the time, she's essentially playing her own, something about she's playing her own mother in the movie. Is the woman playing her the sister of the Dalai Lama? I think she's the sister of the Dalai Lama, like in real life. So she's playing her own mother in the movie. But anyway, so she takes in Brad Pitt. She gives him all of the stuff about protocol and how to approach him, not to look at him. You got to sit lower than him and all this stuff. You got to bow to him, which, if you didn't know, there's a thing. Do you remember when Obama went to Japan and bowed to the Japanese, not the emperor, I guess it's not the emperor, but is it he bowed to somebody in Japan. I sound like a real idiot here. Anyway, he went to Japan, he bowed to somebody, it was a state visit. And the news media, especially, I remember Rush Limbaugh and stuff being up in arms about this. But do you know the reason that why he was up in arms about this? It's that I think probably most Americans don't know this. The rule for Americans is that Americans, even in diplomatic visits, don't bow to anyone, don't bow to a person, is the official. I don't know if that's official, but that's the mentality. So, for instance, you know how American men can be, like for instance, Spielberg being knighted by the Queen. And they call him Sir Steven Spielberg. Well, he's not actually a knight because he's not English. He's American, so he can't be a knight. But it's just a mark of honor. But you still don't bow. So you don't prostrate yourself. You don't bow to the leader of another nation. Now that doesn't count for instance, for when you're in church or something, you bow before no foreign leader. You bow, you genuflect and get on your knees and bow for God. But he does this in the movie because I guess his circumstances and because Heinrich Herr did finally become a Tibetan Buddhist. All of his, not all of his Germanness, but at the time it was totally went away, right? So he bows and he gets this job and he ends up tutoring the Dalai Lama, and he teaches the Dalai Lama English, French, geography, math. He's his tutor. There's a scene where the Dalai Lama immediately, he's a kid, so he says, "Can you build a movie house for me? Can you build a cinema? I want to be able to watch movies. If I order it, then they have to build it." So he says, "What? I can't. I can't do this." But he ends up surveying. He becomes a surveyor. He builds this movie house. But when they're building it and they're digging in the dirt, there are a bunch of the Tibetans dig up these worms. This is a great scene. They dig up these worms, and they say, "We can't work on this because." And then Brad Pitt takes this to the Dalai Lama and he says, "What's the deal with the worms?" And he laughs. And I thought this was funny. He says, "All Tibetans believe that every worm is a reincarnation of your mother." So because one of the guys holds up a worm and says, "This worm could have been your mother in a past life." And the Dalai Lama actually laughs about this in the movie. And he says, and he says, this is what they believe. You got to respect what they believe, that they don't harm living things. They don't harm living creatures. I guess, are the Tibetans totally vegan? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. So anyway, he says, "You're a smart guy. Find a solution." So Brad Pitt finds a solution by having them dig up all the worms and then just place them away from the movie house. He builds a cinema for him. And eventually what happens is the Chinese come and World War II ends, so now he can go back to Austria, but he gets a letter from his son, because he's been writing letters to his son all this time, and he gets a letter from his son, Rolf, and the letter says, "Don't ever write to me again. You're not my dad." You're not my dad! You're not my dad! So he is sad, and he's sleeping outside, and he's mad, and he's pissed, and sad, right? So he decides not to go back. Also, David Thewlis doesn't want to go back. They found their physical and spiritual home in Tibet, I suppose. They are mountaineers, so that's where they want to be. So now they become advisors to the Dalai Lama in diplomatic affairs, if you can call it as such, because the Chinese, after 1947, with Mao, decide that Tibet is their first place that they are going to look to when they want to unite all of the Chinese people in the Chinese homeland. So they start doing these attacks on the Tibetan border, which has no military. I mean, it has a very small military. And they task Brad Pitt and David Thewlis with organizing the military because they say, "You're military men." There's another thing in the movie. They say, "You're former military men." Now, why would they say that in the movie, and they're German, if they had no military experience like the people thought when they were reviewing it in the 90s? I don't get why they thought that. So anyway, they kind of try and organize this. The Dalai Lama has a dream about that his home Lhasa is being attacked, and then it comes to pass. That actually happens. And then the Chinese delegation comes of these three generals who they have to build a runway. They land and they walk over the mandala and they say basically that the place is poison and they take it over. But they are sold out by one of their guys in the Tibetan sort of delegation who takes a peace with them because now that the Tibet has offered autonomy for their region as long as they know that China is their mother country and that they have to pay fealty and homage to China, and they take that. And Brad Pitt is pissed about this. He thinks that they've sold out, but in the end, he makes peace with the place, and he makes his way back to Austria, and he takes with him a music box that plays Debussy because he brought a gift for the Dalai Lama, which was a Tibetan. It was a music box, and it played it played Debussy. And the boy was enamored with this. He'd never heard music like this before, and he tells him what it is. And in fact, in one part, he says, "Heinrich, you have all the answers. What should we do?" And Heinrich says, "I don't have all the answers. I'm just a man." And I thought that was really great because the reviews all talk about how there's no growth, there's no difference in his character throughout the movie, but there clearly is. And when he gets back to Austria, his son won't talk to him, but he leaves the music box for him because his son is now about the Dalai Lama's age. And in the movie, he makes note of the fact that he treats the Dalai Lama the way he does because he sees him as his son, as his sort of temporary son while he's in exile. So he's gone off into a self-imposed wilderness to climb this mountain, but in fact, he ends up, the mountain climbs him, I suppose. He gets humbled. He gets brought down low at the roof of the world and understands humility and love. And when he gets back to Austria and he gives the music box to his son, the next scene that we see, the last scene in the movie is he and his son climbing a mountain, and now he's got a great relationship with his son, and the movie's over. And I thought that was great. The movie ends with a postscript, talking about Chinese aggression in Tibet and all that. It was filmed by Jean-Jacques Arnaud, and it was all filmed in Argentina, which I thought was pretty cool because it really does look Tibetan. I guess it was perfect for Argentina and Patagonia and mountain climbing. And it's just a pretty well done movie, and it talks about how they remained friends until Hera's death, I think like in the 90s. Of course, the Dalai Lama is still alive. And then, of course, the Dalai Lama had to go into exile in India. So I think he's still there. I think it's right over the border in India, in the Himalayas. So he's not technically in Tibet. But Tibet is, as far as I know, Tibet is open for foreigners. I mean, they have, because of the mountain climbing tourism. And one of my friends, Steph, worked in Kathmandu. Is it Kathmandu or there's a name of a famous bar there, Tiger. I think it's Tiger Bar. Let me look it up. That she worked at for a little while. Tibet Bar Tiger. What's it called? There's a bar there. She worked there. It's full of expats. Anyway, so that's 7 Years in Tibet, and I thought that was pretty promising. This movie was, it did pretty well, and it came out, of course, in 1997. This is after Brad Pitt had already broken through as a leading man, and he's clearly a leading man. So let's talk about the next movie, which is Legends of the Fall, because I'd never seen this one, and yeah, it's the same one. Yeah, it's the same one. It's the same one that she worked at in Indiana Jones. Is it? Where's Timbuktu? Where is Xanadu? In Xanadu did Kublai Khan a stately pleasure dome decree? Timbuktu. Timbuktu. Is that just Shangri-La? Touareg. Oh. Touareg. That's the name of the Vietnamese. The Volkswagen. Touareg. Is that just the other name for Timbuktu? What the fuck? This is Mansa Musa. Okay, so that's different region. So I'm thinking of Kathmandu. All right. So and also remember the Golden Child with Eddie Murphy. Golden Child. Basically, this is kind of the same movie, but that's a good movie too. All right. So Legends of the Fall came out in 1994. This was after Brad Pitt's big introduction in 1992 with Thelma and Louise, the Ridley Scott movie, which again, was it Ridley Scott or Tony Scott? I don't know, but I haven't seen it, and I'm not gonna see it. Probably, I'd watch it, sure, but I just I've never gone out of my way to watch Thelma and Louise. I just don't care. I would rather watch, I'd rather watch the scene in Don't Cry, where Slash drives his car off the cliff, than watch the same scene from Thelma and Louise. Yes, Charles Dance. Charles Dance is in that movie. So that was a great movie in the 80s. That was a good movie. We used to rent that movie all the time when I was a kid. So Legends of the Fall also occurs after Johnny Suede in Cool World, and after 1993 was True Romance. Brad Pitt played a small character, and then he played Floyd, right? The stoner. I think they went, he's got the honey bear bong. Anyway, so Legends of the Fall is, who directed Legends of the Fall? There was Jean-Jacques Arnaud. Oh, was it Edward Zwick? Yeah, Edward Zwick directed it. He also directed Blood Diamond. It's funny because Edward Zwick's movies are almost all the same. They all have the same theme. And so let's get into the themes of Legends of the Fall, because it's got Anthony Hopkins, Dr. Lecter. Did you see me in Legends of the Fall? It's got Aidan Quinn. It's got little Henry Lee Lucas from E.T., little Henry Lee Lucas Thomas, and it's got, what's her name, Ormond, and it's got Karina Lombard, which I loved. I was waiting the whole movie for Karina Lombard to show up. I saw that she was in the cast, because I used to love watching her she was in Wide Sargasso Sea that we covered. We actually covered that book, Wide Sargasso Sea by Gene Reese. All right, so I'd never seen the movie. I confused it with A River Runs Through It, because it's set in Montana. I like that it was set in Montana because my great grandmother was from Montana. She was in the 1905 earthquake in San Francisco, and her brother was a cowboy out there. And I liked this thing about Montana. And in fact, I bet Yellowstone happened because Kevin Costner rewatched this movie and thought, let's make a whole show here. I bet you anything that's what happened, besides him probably having a house in Montana. So anyway, so what it's about is Anthony Hopkins plays a Union soldier, a Indian killer in the late 1800s, and he's driving along some dudes along the Cherokee, rocking on a trail of tears. Remember that song about Europe? Cherokee, rocking on a trail of tears. You remember that song? So he's out there with that kind of. There's a Christian Bale movie about this also, but he's upset with what he has to do for the government, and he throws down his saber and he says, "Fuck this," and he walks away. And Anthony Hopkins is a based character in this movie. He does not like the government at all, and he goes out and finds a little plot of land in Montana that's a sort of a Neo-Eden. There's nobody around. He has a wife, and he has 3 kids. He has 3 boys. And he's also got a Native American who works for him and he's got kind of a family there. And the Native American, it's a frame story, is the one who's narrating it. And it's a little hokey because he's sitting in a wigwam at the beginning, and he's blind, and he's like, Brad Pitt's character is named Tristan. So he's like, Tristan Haggard was a wild boy. And he does the like a bunch of times in the movie. But he describes the 3 boys, and Brad Pitt is the middle child. And of course, he says he is wild. He's wild. And he teaches him all of his Native American ways out there in the wilderness. And we know that it's going to be. I'm watching the movie, and I'm like, this is pretty cool, because his character, it really is like he's living the life that a boy is supposed to live. He's educated, but he also runs wild in the woods. He paints his face, and eventually he tries to prove himself in his own rite of passage by confronting a bear in a cave. And this was actually really cool. This could have been hokey, but I thought it was pretty cool. He goes up to a bear cave and he's got a spear, and he walks up and he wakes the sleeping bear, and the bear comes out and slashes his arm, draws first blood, and then the bear slashes him, gets his paw on a tree, and the young Brad Pitt, who's not Brad Pitt, but is his character Tristan, takes his knife and stabs the bear in the hand, and then the bear runs off. The actor who plays the bear actor, it's actually a bear. The bear actor is great because the bear lumbers off, kind of limping. It's very, very good limping from this bear. And when they come and rescue him, his father says, "How could you? What do you think you're doing now, sir?" That's my Anthony Hopkins. "Sir, what do you think you're doing now, sir? How could you be so reckless?" And the old Indian says, "Very good. He fought with bear." And we see a bear claw on the ground, and he makes it into a talisman for him. And now the legend, I kept thinking, is the movie called Legends of the Fall? Because that's going to be his Native American name, Legends of the Fall. Is that his name, Legends of the Fall? It's also Legends of the Fall, like the fallen world, because as we're going to see with what happens in the rest of the story, and because they keep everybody in this falls, they keep dying. There's a lot of death in this movie, but he says the old Indian shaman says that when a man draws blood by fighting a bear, their souls are entwined and they can't rest because now he has the soul of the bear in him and he's in the soul of the bear. So then there's a scene later on when it's Brad Pitt and they hear that one of their cattle has been killed. The cattle keeps being killed by this bear, and they go overlooking this pass, looking down from this promontory, and they see the bear. Brad Pitt's about to kill him, but he doesn't. He holds off the shot. And the Indian says, "I didn't know why he held off the shot, but later I understood it was because he is the bear." And it sounds really hokey, but it was very cool in the movie. It was really cool. And so when we first see Brad Pitt in the movie, they made this movie for him. It's a vehicle for him, and we see a horse. We hear a horse riding, and the woman, like Henry Lee Lucas Thomas, has brought back his wife Julia Ormond. He's going to marry her. They're not married yet. He's going to marry her. Aiden Quinn's now grown up. He's the older brother, and they're at the ranch house or whatever, and they're looking out, and they hear this. They hear the hooves. What do you call it? A hoof? Ma, we got that thing. We got that thing caught it's in the grill of the car. We need to borrow this. What do you call that? The paw? The hoof. So we hear these hooves, and we see Brad Pitt coming up over the horizon, and you're like, oh yeah, this movie is made for, he really does look cool. He's riding this horse over, and there's one scene in particular where I know the ladies are watching this movie, especially at the time, and they swooned at this. And it's even, for us fellas, this was pretty cool. They're going to hop on their horses, and they all kind of lumber up onto their horses. And Brad Pitt, I got to say, dude, I've never seen anybody mount a horse like this before. He walks up to this thing. He just fucking kicks his leg up and side jumps onto this horse faster than I've ever seen anybody mount a horse before. You know, in the movies, they got the cowboys, they run up and they kind of jump from behind and they, with their hands, or they can jump down and they land on the horse, or there are a number of different things. But I've never seen anybody mount a horse like this in a movie. I thought it was pretty cool. And it was him doing it. So I thought that was pretty cool. He was dedicated to this role. I like that. So then what happens is Henry Lee Lucas Thomas keeps going on about the German aggression in Europe. And Anthony Hopkins doesn't want to hear it. We won't hear politics in this house. And he says, Yes, Father, what do you know about war? What do I know about war? Son, you exist because I was in the war and because of what I knew. And now I had a family, so we wouldn't have to do that. And besides, what do we care about that? What do we care about Monroe Doctrine or something? We're here in Montana. We're trying to make our lives. But the reason that Henry Thomas has to go off and join the war, and it's 1914, so he has to go and join the Canadians. He's not even fighting with the Americans. He has to fight with the Canadians. The reason he does this is because he's the littlest brother, and because he can't prove himself to his wife because he's outshone by three levels of guys who are more alpha than he is. So Brad Pitt's his older brother. Brad Pitt obviously out alphas him. And there's a scene where he's talking about his performance with how he's worried about his future performance with his wife because when they get married, because he doesn't know what to do. And Brad Pitt says, "Well, he says, I guess you're gonna, right?" And he's like, he's like, how could you be? And Brad Pitt's like, "No, you're gonna have to plow, dude. That's what you're gonna have to do if you're gonna be an alpha." And Henry Thomas does not. He's like, "What?" So he's out alpha by Brad Pitt. Julia Ormond also made eyes with Aidan Quinn because he's the oldest brother and he's got some sort of business savvy. So he's out alpha by him. And then of course Anthony Hopkins, when she first greets Anthony Hopkins, the father, she goes up and kisses him on the cheek, and he's like, oh. And by the way, his bitch ass wife left. She leaves for almost the whole movie, and we don't get an explanation why. She just leaves. So she's peaced out. So whatever about her. She comes back later, but it's like, oh, she came back after he had the stroke. So anyway, so he gets out alphaed by three different levels of dudes above him. So the only way he can prove himself is to go off to war. So when he goes off to war, of course, the other two brothers, they're like, well, we got to go too. Because Aidan Quinn's going to go and, he wants to go and be the older brother and protect him. And Brad Pitt's like, you guys don't want to go do this. But then he's definitely the one to go. So then when they go to war, this is pretty good. When they go to war, it's hokey and melodramatic because it's unlikely they would put all three brothers in the same company. I mean, why would they all be together? That's what Saving Private Ryan was all about, right? Which I'm not even going to get into in this one, but I was thinking about doing that as analysis for this, but I thought, I've already talked about it enough. So what's your language, sir? What do you mean? Whoa! That's Anthony Hopkins. Whenever he gets mad in any movie, he does it in Dracula, he does it in The Bounty. Dr. Lecter. Did you see that World War I is going on right now, Dr. Lecter? So they joined the Canadian Army, right? And they're in the trenches. And, it's trench warfare. It's a pretty basic version of it, but it's pretty well done, They're going over the top. And eventually, Henry Lee Lucas he wants to go out on his own and again prove himself further, and he gets blinded in a chemical attack, in a mustard gas attack, and he's standing there, and Brad Pitt he finds out his little brother went out on his own. He volunteered for a mission, so he runs out to save him, and he sees these two Germans in pickle hobs. They're called pickle hobs, loading up a machine gun, and they get, and he is caught against the barbed wire, and he gets smoked. And Brad Pitt runs over, and he smokes these other two guys, and he kills a whole bunch of people on the way, and he says, no! And then he takes out his knife that the old shaman gave him, and he cuts out, when you're watching it, you're like, what's he doing? I kind of figured what he was doing, but he cuts out his brother's heart, and he brings it back, and he's going to, so that he can send his heart back with his brother, Aidan Quinn, who got injured, like, in the butt. Running. I mean, he didn't do shit. He's like, no. He gets smoked, like running out of the trenches or whatever. But he gives it to him to take back to their dad so they can bury it. His heart can be buried in Montana. It's pretty savage, pretty straight up. And then he takes the blood, paints his face, takes off his shirt. He goes out on his horse, and he starts scalping Germans. And he comes back with all these scalps on a necklace around him. And he has gone war crazy. He's gone blood drunk. He's gone total berserker mode. And he ends up getting discharged and then sent to a sanitarium, which we don't really see. But then he finally gets back to Montana. And then the brother, because Brad Pitt is now there with Julia Ormond, who then falls in love with him. And it's not because, and they've just buried the little brother, and she tries to explain this isn't because, yeah, he goes bear mode. She says, this isn't because, she says, I loved your brother. I loved him in a different way, but now she's fallen in love with Brad Pitt because as Will Ferrell says in Wedding Crashers, grief is nature's most powerful aphrodisiac, I guess, and it's Brad Pitt or whatever. But then Aidan Quinn, who made a pass at her also, all the brothers have made a pass at Julia Ormond. Okay. And they never married. They actually never married. So she never got married to Henry Lee Lucas because he was going to come back and marry her. And then what happens is they fall in love, and then Aidan Quinn comes out and says, basically he blames Brad Pitt for the death, which is the same sort of thing that happens in 7 Years in Tibet. But he tells him, if you make that statement one more time, you're not my brother. Because I went out there to save him. Where were you, right? And this shows how family relationships turn into poison over jealousy, especially when it's amazing how they've got all this land and there's all this wilderness and all this nature, and the father has provided for them. God has provided for them his bounty, and the father, Anthony Hopkins, has provided for them. And yet, with all this stuff, they've got to go to these extra locations, and the brother, through jealousy, ends up saying the things that will hurt them the most. So then Brad Pitt, he gets married to Julia Ormond, and then there's a long sequence of where he leaves again, and he says, basically, I got to go off, and he's like, he doesn't say it, but he's like, I got to go off and find myself, and because he starts becoming, when you watch the movie, you know what he's doing. He's trying to ride off cliffs. There's a scene where there's a calf stuck in barbed wire, and he comes up and he's trying to roughly get the barbed wire out, but he ends up cutting the calf's throat. And this is an avatar for his brother, again, caught in the barbed wire in the movie, and he can't save him. So he starts being reckless, and the old Indian is saying he's out there, he's got a wild spirit, and he's trying to find himself because he's got this bear spirit inside of him, and he's blood drunk, and he's just reckless, and he's just he's trying to find life through confronting death. So he leaves, and he tells his wife, I gotta go. And Julia Ormond says, she makes a promise to him and says, I'll be here when you get back, even if it's forever. And then, of course, he goes off, and he goes off on his ship. He mentioned he was going to meet his family in Cornwall. Some sort of sailor. He goes on a boat. He's like trading gold in Timor, and then he's smoking opium on the boat. He's like got these Chinese ladies with him. He's being real wild out there. He's out there just hawking that opium pipe on that yacht and selling that gold Rambo style. And he writes a letter to his wife back home and says, basically, sell the house, sell the kids, kill them all, like he does in Apocalypse Now. So, no, he says, like, our marriage is dead as I am dead. Forget about me, marry somebody else. And that's basically enough for her to say, okay, well, fine, because he's gone for years. So then it's essentially divorce. I mean, look at the letter. So then who does she marry? Of course, she marries Aidan Quinn now. And Aidan Quinn is the oldest brother, and now he moves off, and he's got to leave the house and start his own family. He can't just stay at the house in Montana. And then he gets in with these gangsters because it's the 20s and they're bootlegging. And then eventually he runs for Congress, and they send a delegation to the house, and they say, he says, I want your blessing, Father, to be in politics. And Anthony Hopkins says, hell no, because he hates the government. He says, they've never done anything good for us. They've taken away our son. They ruined my wife. They ruined my life. Everything they ever do is just shit, and it's full of corruption. And so he's based, and he goes off and he does it anyway. Then he gets married to Julia Ormond. Well, Brad Pitt finally comes back, and he appears at her house. I mean, the movie, so it should have ended right after this, at the point where Brad Pitt becomes a bootlegger himself, and now he's in competition with his brother's bootlegging. I mean, it's too much of a sort of superficial saga at this point, because he now finds Karina Lombard, who was the daughter of the ranch hand and the Indian lady that sort of was around when Brad Pitt was there, and she said she wanted to marry him when she was little. You know, it was just a. But then he goes off to war, and he comes back 20 years later, and now she's Karina Lombard. So then he marries her, and you know, I guess when he left, he was probably I don't know what it was. I mean, maybe there's 5 years or something. But when he gets back, I assume he's like 35, so she's like 30. And so they get married. Well, then that's where the movie should have ended because then they have kids and it's fine. But instead of that, now we get this whole extra plot where the bootleggers who have pretty ridiculous Irish accents are like, right, we're here, we're bootleggers. But they're not even that good. It's not even a Northern Irish accent. It's like, we're bootlegging. We're bootlegging in Montana and we run all the crime because we have Irish accents. Right, of course. So they tell him, you got to give up the bootlegging or else we're going to kill you. And the only reason you haven't done it yet is because your brother is in the Senate. Right. So then what happens is Aidan Quinn meets them. He meets Brad Pitt and his family, thinks they're beautiful. But then after they leave and they get in the car, they get confronted on a country road by the evil sheriff and the crooked cops and the gangsters, and the guy fires off a Tommy gun in the air, but one of them, I guess, is ricocheted off the mountainside, and it kills Karina Lombard. So then Brad Pitt goes blood drunk again, and he bashes he basically destroys this cop who fired the weapon before he gets knocked out. And then, on top of that, Aidan Quinn says, oh, yeah, remember that cop that you beat up? Well, you got to serve 30 days in jail. That's ridiculous. That was ridiculous in the movie. But I guess he goes ahead and does it because he has a family. Then when he gets out, he goes full scout mode, and they attack the other guys, the corrupt guys, and then they make their way finally back to the ranch. Anthony Hopkins has had a stroke, and this was really rough. This was really rough in the movie. It was rough emotionally. Yes, it was. It was rough emotionally when Karina Lombard got killed. I felt that was unearned and stupid in the movie. Like, I thought the movie should have ended already at that point. But when Anthony Hopkins has had his stroke, his acting is so... I could not believe that they greenlit this as the storyline at this point, and they let him do this impression. It was just not good. He's basically playing the old prospector from Blazing Saddles. No, gosh darn it, dang nabbit! The sheriff is... Right. That's Anthony Hopkins at this part of the movie. And also, he's writing... This was crazy. He can't really speak, so he writes notes on a chalkboard he carries around his neck. But when he writes the note about, he says happy, he writes it upside down and backwards looking at it, and it's perfect to us looking at it, but he had to have written it upside down and backwards, and it's like, what? That was totally incongruous with the scene. How could he write that? The guy's a fucking hieroglyphic master, writing these notes in chalkboard on his chest, and he's incapacitated because of the stroke. It was weird. Anyway, the sheriffs come and they confront him again, and then of course, what happens? Aidan Quinn ends up. Brad Pitt's going to jump in front of because his dad goes out there with the bearskin. Oh, by the way, so here's the symbolism here. His dad comes out with the bearskin coat on, Anthony Hopkins. So he's now the bear man. And I was like, as soon as he walked out of the house, I was like, this guy's got a shotty under that coat. I can just tell. I can tell. And of course, that's what he did. He throws open the coat. Bam! He blasts one of the guys. Okay. And then the other guy is about to level his pistol and shoot Anthony Hopkins, but Brad Pitt is going to jump in the way, and he's going to save another member of his family. But then, yeah, perfect. That was pure frontier gibberish. Gabby Johnson was right. And Aidan Quinn comes from around the corner. He's a congressman, and he blows the guy away. And they all live not so happily ever after because now Brad Pitt has to leave again. I don't know what he's going to go find now, but he leaves again, and he says, okay, can you take care of my kids? Because I got to go again. And he leaves again. There's too much leaving in the movie. Like, I get it. You got to go sow your wild oats and go off and go backpacking in Europe and find yourself and take a name like Xavier or Maximilian or Dexter or something with an X, right? But this was ridiculous that he did that. So the movie could have been really great, and it was a really good Western, 20th century Western saga, and I did like it. But Roger Ebert said, I'm not going to do an impression. That would be too bad. No, but Roger Ebert at the time wrote, this is not a capital S serious movie. This is a melodrama and a vehicle for Brad Pitt, essentially. And he's kind of right in that. I mean, it is melodramatic and it is a melodrama, and it's not a serious movie in terms of how it was the language of the movie, the visual language. The visual language was serious in terms of its wide panoramas and its Americascapes, but they tried to fit too much into the movie and not to focus on the human drama that could have taken place in about 2/3 of the movie. Then it would have been a serious movie. But I gotta say, this is the movie that broke through. Brad Pitt broke through as an actor with this movie, and it's earned. I mean, he really is fantastic. He's very, very good in the movie. There's the scene of him. The scene of him going blood drunk was good, and the scene of him weeping at the grave of his brother overlooking the mountains was really fantastic. And I don't mean that just because he's crying in a movie. It was because he's crying in the movie honestly, and he's trying to hide it. That's why it was good, because his future wife walks up, and he kind of tells her, he doesn't shoo her away, but he tells her, he needs a moment because he's with his brother here, and he's at the cross gravestone overlooking the Montana wilderness-scape, and I thought it was a beautiful moment. And I thought that was really well done. That was totally unlike how you see other movies where it is, okay, actor, can you cry on cue? Well, every great actor can cry on cue. So that's a given. It has to be something that's honest. It has to be something where we see it in his eyes. And it was honest in this movie. I think Brad Pitt's a really good actor. All right, so that's Legends of the Fall and 7 Years in Tibet. Hey, thank y'all for being here. We're about to get on to our final movie here. If you guys want to support, I would really appreciate it. You can super chat. Hit the super chat button. You can super chat, ask questions, send me a dono in the super chats. You can also support me at the links right here. You can support me at PayPal and Cash App, Venmo. And, of course, like I said, I will be doing a serious literary analysis in 2 nights when I'm doing the Heydrich is Himmler's Brain, HHHH Laurent Binet analysis. And then a bunch of other stuff coming up soon. More Shakespeare, of course. Kafka. We've got The Counsel. I'm going to be doing the film The Counselor by Cormac McCarthy. I probably should have done that already, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it anyway. Hope you guys are enjoying this on a nice bank holiday Monday, you lovely, lovely people. So, final movie. The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Now, this is by far the best of these movies. And have you guys seen this movie in the chat? Have you seen this? Or put this in the comments afterwards if you've seen any of these movies and what you think. Give me your honest takes on these. This is the movie I don't think did that well at the box office, but I remember the first time I watched it, I was teaching at boarding school, and I bought the movie on DVD at Walmart, and I was living in my house out in the country, and I spent a night watching this movie, and I was like, holy shit, this is really, really well done. It's shouts out to Jordan Kipp right there for becoming a high IQ book enjoyer. Thank you for the memberships. You can grab memberships. So the movie is directed by Andrew Dominic, who's a New Zealand director. He's worked frequently with Brad Pitt. Shouts out to Toledo out there in NZ. And most importantly, the cinematography is done by Roger Deakins. Roger Deakins is the guy who is one of the great cinematographers living now. He did Dune and all these other movies. And he stated that my frames are dropping a little bit, but it's just internet craziness as usual. So we'll just have to get through that. But Roger Deakins is the cinematographer, and he stated that the scene with the train arrival, which is right here, and the stills don't even really do a job. I mean, that's a cool image. That is really, really cool. Look at that image. So there's Brad Pitt as Jesse James, right? Double gunned. He got, he's 2 chains, 2 guns, right? He's got his bank robber mask on, and he's actually got a bowler hat on. And this is the train robbery at the beginning of the film. This is really well done. I mean, it really is good. It's fantastic. Here's another still image of him waiting for the train to arrive. Look at that. All natural light except for the train light right there. Look at the lights in the background coming off the train. I mean, this is very, very cool. And Roger Deakins stated that this was his high point of his career. This was one of the high points, was that scene, that arrival scene of the train and the train robbery. Brad Pitt stated that this was his favorite movie that he's done. The cast is amazing. It's got Brad Pitt, Sam Rockwell, Casey Affleck, Sam Shepard. It's got Jeremy Renner's in this. It is really, really well done. It is visually stunning. It's a good soundtrack. So what it's about is Jesse James. We get a narration. We get a voiceover throughout the thing, and that works well. A lot of times we've talked about how voiceover does not work well in the language of film. Voiceover can be something that the production insists upon because they feel like they need to give more exposition and they need to dumb down the audience, and they have no way to tie up the narrative, and that's a problem with the writing. Now, of course, we get examples where the voiceover will elevate the film. The best example of that is Apocalypse Now. Michael Herr wrote the voiceover for the John Milius script. We talked about Apocalypse Now a number of times. I mean, that's the best voiceover of all time. But this one, or think of The Thin Red Line, right? The Thin Red Line is an example where the voiceover is necessary to the narrative. In this one, it's also necessary because we get a kind of a novelization in film of an original novel. And it's like we're being told a historical story of characters in a melancholy hue. And I'm going to touch on this in 2 nights again with, that's one of the major parts of this HHHH book by Laurent Binet, because he does that in his construction of the narrative in making a historical novel. He talks about how a lot of times, what does he say? He says that sometimes adding dialogue in a work of historical fiction or a novel that deals with historical material feels like you're leaving evidence on the floor of a crime scene where it's already rife with incriminating evidence. It's unnecessary. You don't need it. But this one, it works very well because it's like we're looking at the movie through a daguerreotype or or simply through an old photograph. Jesse James, of course, was a Southern sympathizer, a guerrilla after the War of Northern Aggression, and he continues with the James Gang and robs a whole shitload of stuff. This is important to the American myth, the American mythology, characters like Jesse James. This doesn't really occur anywhere else in the world. It occurs in little bits, like it's a sort of he becomes obviously a sort of a Robin Hood character. It's also important in places like, like Australia, where there's a sort of a different kind of West, a Wild West with Ned Kelly and such. But one of the things about America and the Wild West and the conquering of the West is the insistence upon self-reliance and mistrust of the government. And that is something that is obviously, the movie is also important because that is going away. Now, that's not to say that the characters are good. And what is good? What's bad? Well, in terms of just some of their activities in this, I mean, yeah, they're robbing, stealing, killing, murdering. And so they are a bunch of pretty hardcore thieves, right? This is an intense gang of criminals. They're not to be looked on with envy in that sense, but what they represent to the American spirit in terms of the myth that arises is important, and that's where Casey Affleck comes into play. Because Casey Affleck is very, very good in this movie. He plays Robert Ford, Bob, and his whole purpose in the movie is basically that he is much younger than Jesse James, and he idolizes Jesse, and he has all of these dime store novels. Now, this is like a historical fiction because these things didn't occur. I don't think the dime store novels about Jesse James were published until about 1901, and this occurs in 10 years, at least 20 to 10 years prior to that. I think it starts in 1882. So 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 his way of looking at Jesse James is through a kind of a character that he's developed in his mind by reading the literature about him, and that's one of the reasons why he's creepy in the movie, because Casey Affleck plays this role very well. It's hard to pin down what Bob's problem is, what his issue is, but he is the most uncomfortable, unlikable character in the whole movie, and there are very few like him in other movies, because he's not quite a serial killer type. He's not quite sociopathic. He's not quite a Spurg. He's not quite he's sort of all of those things and none of those things. It's like he wants to film a movie of his own life and take the place of Jesse James and becomes him by killing. Remember, there was a scene in Breaking Bad where they talked about that. Like, you don't become Jesse James by killing him, right? But that's what happens. And in fact, so what happens in the movie, just a general overview, is that the James gang is out in the woods. They're about to rob a train. The whole gang is there. There's all these characters, and Robert Ford has showed up with his brothers, and they want to be part of this gang. And then Knights of the Golden Circle was John Wilkes Booth. I don't think Jesse James was in that. Maybe, but anyway, so they rob the train. They have to, we're given a saga version of their lives after the robbery and in between robberies, and what these various characters do and how they have their own infighting, and how Jesse James is he's a terrifying, sinister figure that is charismatic and likable, but everyone is deathly afraid of. And we also deal with Frank James, and Frank James is played by Sam Shepard, who looks like he would be Jesse James's dad in the movie, but it's not. But he's also the one who first calls out Bob. So there's a scene in the woods where Bob walks up behind him, and we hear the cocking of a gun, and he says, "Whoa, I'm here," and he's very creepy, and he's talking to him about he's trying to make small talk, but instantly Frank James, Sam Shepard says, "Every time you talk, you give me the willies. Now I'm telling you to get the hell out of here." Right? And he calls him out for what he is. But Jesse James, I think, keeps him around because he can use him, and because it's that thing about this sort of megalomaniacal, sinister, charismatic figure who invites infighting amongst his followers in order to further his own designs. And it'll also take away from dangers inherent to him within the group, because they're all thieves and they're all killing, but he has to remain in charge. And in fact, Frank and Jesse are the only members of the James gang who are still at large and still free out of all the original members who are now, it says, either dead or in jail. So now we follow the characters around. We deal with Sam Shepard's, we deal with Sam Rockwell's character, who's Bob's brother. They're always clowning on him. They're always making fun of him. He's kind of like the person who gets bullied at school, but in this gang. And then we eventually the story goes on, and finally Bob and Sam Rockwell think that they're going to be killed by Jesse James in the process of robbing this bank. So they try to get the jump on him, and Jesse James turns around inside of they're staying at his house, and before they're about to go on the robbery, he turns around and Bob shoots him in the back of the head and kills him. Now after that, there's a whole sequence of where Robert Ford did this. He toured the United States playing in a version of his own life. So he and Sam Rockwell are in there's a melodramatic sort of vaudeville act where they reenact the killing of Jesse James because he's so famous. After Jesse's killed, they put him on ice, and they take a photograph of him, and the photograph of him goes mega viral. Everyone buys it for $2 a copy, which is like huge at the time, obviously. And it becomes more famous than, photos of Queen Victoria or whatever. And then everyone demands to see this play. But at the same time, Sam Rockwell's character, who is his brother, can't act. And it's interesting that he can't act in the play of his own life, where he's playing Jesse James, whereas Casey Affleck can act as himself. So again, there's a weird thing where we go through this apotheosis where Casey Affleck goes from playing a creep, he wants to play his life like he's playing his own a character of his own life in a movie of his own life, to actually playing that character of himself on stage. And at times, Sam Rockwell, it shows, actually ends up getting more and more into the role of Jesse, and he ends up being afraid that his own brother is going to shoot him in the back of the head with live fire on stage, because now he's terrified of him, because he's played his own story 800 times. It says that nobody in life, no traitor had ever played the action of their own treachery so many times in public. And eventually Casey Affleck, he gets all this hate mail, even though the play is famous and he's making money. He gets all this hate mail, and he just has no feelings about it. He just reads it with no, there's no recognition on his face. And so then one night they're on stage, a guy calls out, "Coward, coward," and he jumps off the stage just like John Wilkes Booth, and he attacks a bunch of guys in the audience, gets thrown in jail. Sam Rockwell eventually comes to terms with the fact that he has so cowardly been a part of killing Jesse James, even though they did this because they knew he was going to kill them. And he ends up smoking him, so he unalives himself. And now Robert Ford is left, and he's the only guy left. Everybody else is in prison or dead. And eventually he opens this bar, and a guy comes in out of nowhere and yells, "Hey there," or whatever. "Hey, Bob," and smokes him with a shotgun. And that's it. So Maddie says, "All right, fam, unfortunately I have to head to bed. Pierce is back open tomorrow bright and early." Well, you go get those mergers and acquisitions. This is a cash bar only. Shouts out to Maddie out there. Now, the reason the movie is great, I think, is because it's because of that one scene. I mean, we do see the movie like we're looking through glass, like we're looking through, tempered glass to the outside. And we are at a number of times. It's like, but what that does is when we're inside of a house on the frontier or in Missouri and we're looking out at Brad Pitt coming over a snowy field and he's all in black juxtaposed against the whiteness of the snow, and there are hardly any people around, we feel a sense of dread. They can't hear him coming, but they always see him coming, and he always comes to the front. He doesn't sneak up on him, but they are always afraid, because they know that Brad Pitt does a great role in this because he is so menacing, and there are huge distances in this movie, and the movie breathes. They let the movie breathe. I really like that. So one thing they did is, instead of having the characters in Stetsons and cowboy hats, it's in just the Wikipedia version, but instead of Stetsons and cowboy hats, they have bowler hats and top hats. The first time we see Bobby, he's in a top hat. Everybody else is in a bowler hat. And it's very good for the time. It's very accurate historically. I think that as far as I know, like this is probably the most accurate version or portrayal of Jesse James as far as they can tell through literature of the time and everything. And he's charismatic and handsome but dark. And he's almost a Byronic character. I mean, look at him right here. This is pure Byronic character. This is the Byronic hero right here, right? So we see Jesse James from behind. This is the wanderer above the sea of fog, right? The Caspar David Friedrich. What they do is the train is coming. All these guys they've recruited from the hills around there. They call all these rubes and hillbillies and stuff. They've recruited them to take part in the robbery, and they're going to get some of the pittance. They're going to get like the watches or whatever. But they get lumber. They put it on the train tracks. Frank really is the leader at this point in terms of that. And Jesse is standing right in the center of the train tracks. And what he does is there's a scene where we see him walk up. He's got spurs on his boots. He kicks his foot into the train track, and then we see him lean his head down and listen to the train tracks, and the rocks start shaking. And it's like, what it shows you is that this character is both grounded and he is galvanized by the same sort of motion as this locomotive. He is standing in front of the Go West Young Man locomotive, like it's going. It looks like, imagine this being a symbol of the Iron Horse going to the other side of the country. It's full of like immigrants and all these people. There are a bunch of people not speaking English, and yet he's also a sort of a Robin Hood figure, but he is dark and utterly violent. And right there, he's standing all in black in a silhouette with that light shining on him, and he doesn't move when the train comes right up to him. And there's a great part in this where the train is slowing down because of the obstruction on the train tracks, and it's sliding towards him, and they must have had a camera rig on the train tracks, and it merges with it, and we see the camera shaking as it's going back until it comes to a full stop. They get on board the train, and at this point, there's two guys inside of the armored part of the train, and one of the old fellas says, "You think that lock's going to hold? You think that's going to stop them?" And the other guy's like, "No, I don't." And you expect them to shoot through the lock, but they don't. They just kick the door right in. And Jesse James is going through all the various boxes. He pistol whips the guy, and they're like, "Geez, Jesse." I mean, even the bad guys are stunned by his propensity for violence. And there's one part where he's about to, he pistol whips the guy. The guy falls on the ground. There's blood trickling out. He puts a pistol to his head, and he's about to pull the trigger. And I think it's Dick Little, it's one of the other guys. He says, "Don't do that." And he doesn't shoot him. But at this point, Brad Pitt turns around to him, and he says, "Don't tell me what to do." And you know that the guys who are in the most danger are the guys in the group. And he's not going to kill him for the money. It's because this guy is he's a total renegade. Right? He's got his brother and everybody else. The theme of the movie is that he represents the kind of the spirit of the South with a guerrilla war, not a bloodlust, but he wants vengeance for the war, vengeance for his family, vengeance for himself, and he's got an inner darkness that shines on the outside. And that's sort of what happens in Legends of the Fall, but everybody else wants one of two things: to be either part of general society or to be part of his little microcosmic society. And they will do anything to do that. And they keep getting terrified or killed, but they keep gravitating towards him. And Casey Affleck represents, ironically, the most likely to be in this group, right? Because he almost has no morals, no quandaries, nothing with any of the actions. He saves his brother. Well, there's a part where Jeremy Renner, who plays this guy, he plays Jesse James's cousin. They've had a beef, and he comes back and he finds out that Casey Affleck and the Dick Little guy and Sam Rockwell are upstairs, and he's standing outside the door. We know he's standing outside the door. They're holding guns on him, waiting for him to come through the door. Finally kicks open the door, and he starts shooting. Sam Rockwell jumps out the window, which is going to give him a broken leg, which Brad Pitt is going to be, it's like he can read their minds. And there's a very occult aspect to the movie because the voiceover will constantly talk about how Jesse is always paranoid. He sees the auguries of death everywhere he looks, in the way that a bird's feathers, the way that the animal's entrails are, the way that birds' feathers are, the way that cat hair flies in the direction of the wind. He sees his death everywhere, and he's got a cough. He's got chest congestion. He's probably got he's got all sorts of problems, even though he's a young guy at the time, but he's living like this, and it's the 19th century. And so finally, when it comes to his death, it's funny because he's got his back turned to us again, just like in this scene. His back is turned towards us, but he's in his family home, and he's looking into a mirror. And so that's sort of showing us that he's finally at one with himself in this image, and he is bringing on his death. He knows that Bob is the angel of death that he's cultivated throughout the entire movie, and he gets his wish. Now, he doesn't say any of that, but through the process of the weird narrative and through the weird character arcs, it comes to that sort of, it's almost like, it's not like they're living in a fatalistic world, but that he is living on the outer fringes of some sort of spirit world made of his of his own making. Like, I mean, it's also hellish. Like, look at this. It's also hellish. I mean, it looks like a demon waiting for Karen, the ferryman, on his long black train, bringing souls into hell. It's like he's waiting for death all the time. And the other characters, they don't, and here he is stepping out of the darkness again in the steam, all loaded up with his face covered, like some sort of angel of death. I mean, and I just think this is a really good movie. It's difficult to sort of put your finger on what's so good about it other than visually. Visually and in an auditory sense, the movie is fantastic. It's absolutely stunning. But the way that, again, the movie breathes. So there's this thing that happens with when the characters are brought together, usually around a dinner table, and they're in a home and they're safe and it's cozy. Brad Pitt, his Jesse James, shows up, and there is a menacing violence. He even says in one part of the movie, nobody has a good time when old Jesse's around, because they're always trying to play for his favor, and they start telling stories and telling lies. That the stories that they want to tell in a mythological sense about the guy who's sitting in front of them start to verge on lies. And if anybody can tell a lie, it's Jesse James. And he does this thing where he doesn't call him out on it, but they'll say something to Brad Pitt, and he does this thing. I'm not going to freeze here. This is what he does. So it's going to be silent for a second. This is what he does. He looks at him and he... Yeah, that's what he said. Like, he's obviously also acting in the scene. And it's very small, and he's looking him right in the eye, unblinking, and then he tries to laugh in a stunted way at a story they've just told. So there are two levels of stories going on. There's this whole thing where they are living in this world, and they're just trying to get along and not get killed by this guy, but also be a part of his organization. And Jesse James is also trying to suss out their lies because they killed his cousin, and he's trying to figure that out and why that, and get to the bottom of it, and also get to the next robbery and live his life and stay free and stay out of jail. But also, there's this other level where everybody is at odds with one another, and when you're watching it, you know that that's exactly what's going on. Anybody who's ever been in a situation like this with a person, you know exactly what's happening in this. There's a person there. Have you guys ever met somebody? I mean, I've known people like this where there's a person who obviously has a capacity for violence or danger. They are a dangerous person. They're also likable and they like you. But when you're in the situation, you can't do anything wrong. And anything fake, they will notice right away. Right? They will notice it. This probably happens a lot when you're a teenager. It can happen in a number of different ways. But Casey Affleck's character is so strange because everything he says is like he's imitating a human being. And yet he's the one who survives in the story. And I think that's because Jesse lets him do that up to the very end. So that is really, I mean, that's the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. I would recommend watching this one definitely out of all of them. It's a pretty, I don't know how to describe it. It's dark. It's slow. I mean, honestly, you can watch this movie and fall asleep and wake up an hour later, and you know exactly where you. It's just I don't know how to describe the movie other than the fact that it breathes. It has a lot of time and space. Shouts out to JW right there for getting another membership, and it lets things happen in a way where other movies rush it. And the problem with Legends of the Fall, again, was that they tried to put too much into the movie. This one is the opposite. There's sort of not much that happens in the movie, but it's all filled with space and time. And that's because it echoes the time, the 19th century. It echoes the post War of Northern Aggression. It echoes pre-modernity, the outlaw lifestyle, and of course the wilderness. It's all set in wilderness. I think it was filmed in Canada, even though it's supposed to be set mostly in Missouri. Even James Carville is even in this movie. Yeah, what we gonna do here as a governor of Missouri, I'm gonna elect my friend right here. He's gonna go in, he's gonna find this awful James gang. This man, his cup is full of iniquity. It is too full. This man, his cup runneth over with iniquity. We're going to find this James gang, and we're going to put them out of their misery like little dogs that they are. They are the wolf dogs on the fringes of Missouri society. He's very good at the movie, actually. And so, yeah, Caravaggio says, I grew up around people like this. They know how to throw a spell on people. Reputation is everything to them. Absolutely. It's very difficult to say because the sort of Miltonian Byronic hero right here, this sort of Satan figure that Jesse James represents in those images and in a lot of the film, this sort of charismatic devil figure is tricky. Not only he's tricky in two ways. He's a trickster, and he does do that in the movie. A lot of what he does is just tricks, but he also invites loyalty from people that it's not self-serving. It's self-serving in a temporary way, but they know they all think they're going to escape. And the only person who does is somebody who's even more empty inside than Jesse James is, and that's Casey Affleck's Robert Ford. And he is he is really, really good at the movie. He's really good because he is so awkward. And it's very difficult to play someone who is awkward in a way that is truthful and honest and is not overdoing it. Imagine how hard it is to play. Imagine how hard it is to live life as a loser who every single thing you say is awkward and gives people the creeps. Because there are people like that, and yet he finds his way through this, and he gets exactly what he wants and what he deserves at the end of the movie. But it's very odd in a movie to have this. Because again, he's not quite serial killer. He's not an overt killer. He's not moral. He's also not like immoral. He's just kind of a mediocrity and weird. And he's a misfit without having any of the positive aspects of that. So it's very unique to play that sort of role. I think he did, it's very good. Sam Rockwell, I think, wanted to play Robert Ford. And then when he didn't get the role, dropped out. I think Brad Pitt really lobbied for him to get the role personally. And Sam Rockwell, by the way, is great. I love him in pretty much everything he's in. We just covered him in the movie Moon. And he's fantastic in this because you could watch this and it would be very easy for Sam Rockwell to be playing himself. But we don't know who Sam Rockwell is, the person. I don't know what he's like. But just to play a person who is laughing and who is, full of kind of good humor most of the movie. What's great about his character is that the good humor in the movie and the picking on his little brother is all honest in the film, but he also does that for a reason. He does it because he's the guy who sort of binds the gang together in a spirit of good humor so that it's not all doom and gloom and robbery. They have to have somebody who makes jokes and who's funny, but he's not intimidating physically, but he's intimidating because he goes along with Jesse and what he does. And then there is a huge volta. There's a huge shift in his character, and that occurs around the time when he thinks that Jesse is going to kill him. So when he starts to realize that Jesse is pretty much on to them and there's no reason why he should be, no one has snitched on them. It's only going to be them that snitch on themselves by overstating something or sharing too much information, right? Or what Jesse has figured out. And there's a great scene where they're at a dinner table and Jesse has come in and Bob wants to leave. And Jesse he literally puts his foot down with that spur and he says, "You're not going anywhere. You forget the reason that I came here. I didn't even tell you why, we need to go into town tomorrow." but I don't like your disposition, and I think it's going to be your brother that I go with, right? And then, of course, Bob, played by Casey Affleck, gets angry at this, but he's also the only one to call him out. He says, yeah, is that why you roughed up our little cousin? Because Jesse James showed up at this farm and he roughed up this teenage boy, and he was with that guy Dick Little, and the other guy was like, man, leave him alone, he doesn't know anything. And Jesse James is like, he knows something. But then at the end of that scene, when they're at the horses, he cries. Brad Pitt cries at the horse. Again, this wasn't the typical crying of the Hollywood actor. This was him turning his face and crying into the horse. And we know it's because he realized in that scene what his life had come to. He had lost control of the reason he was doing all this in the first place. He's got a wife, he's got kids, he's trying to provide for his family, he's got this gang, and he's found himself in the place where he's just roughed up this teenage boy who, honestly, he realizes didn't know anything. And so he gets on the horse and he rides over the horizon, sort of in the same way that he did in Legends of the Fall, but it's also the retreat. It's the retreat into the wilderness of the kind of probing, demon-infested character who is trying to rid himself of his iniquity, and that's going to be his downfall, according to James Carville's character. And it's a really powerful, nuanced scene. I mean, the movie is incredibly nuanced. I thought it was really fantastic. So that is Roger Deakins' cinematography for this movie by Andrew Dominic. Brad Pitt's The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford and his Plan B production studio, made in 2007. Dang, 2007 had some great movies. There were some great movies made. 2006 had Children of Men and Marie Antoinette. I like that movie. 2007 had this. 2007 to about 2012 had some really, really great movies. The Departed came out. Blood Diamond came out. You know, there's a bunch of great movies. American Gangster, Killing Them Softly came out in that time frame. Plan B is good. It's a good. It's not A24. It's Brad Pitt's production company, and it's very good. Fury was fantastic. Fury, I'm probably gonna have to do a full analysis on another time, and that is a very good movie. It would have been good to do today for Memorial Day also, because it's about the tank divisions of World War II. Brad Pitt again plays this character who is, he's an American GI tank guy with a cool haircut, and he's got this gang of guys inside of his tank, and they're going after the Germans. I think it's Antoine Fuqua, or it's one of those guys. It's one of the guys who did Training Day. It's very, very good. And there's a scene at the beginning, remember, where they've just lost a guy, and they got to replace him with Logan Lerman, and he's forced to wash out the inside of the tank, and you see the guy's face sitting on top of his face has been blown off, and it's sitting on top of one of the things inside the tank. It was really, really good. I thought Fury was good in a way that it kind of reversed some of the bad things about Saving Private Ryan. I'll just say about Saving Private Ryan that the reason that Saving Private Ryan is not great, besides the fact that it's marketed as an anti-war movie, but it's really a pro-war movie, and it's totally propagandistic and in all those ways where it subhumanizes the enemy, which is fine, but except for the fact that the stated goal of the movie through the language of the movie is that you're trying to humanize people in a war, that they're not just cogs in a machine, and they're not all sort of humanoids. So then they end up doing that anyway. But one of the things about Saving Private Ryan that's really bad is that remember that scene where they get into the French village and there's a sniper and they're trying to make their way around the village? Well, there's this, listen to the dialogue in the scene. It's so bad because it's totally, instead of having character building, we have exposition in a sense where we're being told what the narrative is instead of following the characters and being honestly interested in them, and it doesn't match with the scenery. So instead of trying to make your way from this wall to this part of the wall, and you got to go across a distance, and you got to survive, and you got to listen to what these people are doing, it's like the one guy's like, "Hey, What do you think Boss did back in the real world? I don't know, but there's a pot on it. We can put $20 and you can win the whole lottery on it. I said he was a teacher. No, I think he was a soldier all the time. What do you think, Boss? I don't know. I'm from Boston. You know what we Boston guys are like. Hey, what about you? What about you there, hillbilly? I don't know. I'm from the South and I'm a sniper. I mean, it's like, you just get these. It's like they're going so heavy-handed on the archetypes. You don't need to do that. We can just learn who they are as we go along. And that's what happens in Fury, I think. We get to know who the characters are through the logic of the sequences, right? We don't need to be told who Shia LaBeouf's character is. We get his sense of morality in the movie and what he believes in through the situation. The situation brings it out like it would do in real human life. That's not to say that the movie has to be realism and doesn't have to be realistic, but it has to be true to what human beings do without being expository. So yeah, let's look at see if we got any super chats. Hey, thank you for the memberships there, you guys. Really appreciate that. And you can go back and watch my most recent stream that I did for members on the Killers of the Flower Moon analysis that I just did. Please go back and watch that. I mean, not all the members have. Look, if you want to watch it, it's there for you. And I'm going to try to do a members only thing like every week for you guys instead of it just being random Monday, Wednesday night. I think maybe Thursday night would be a good night to do a members only stream, and we'll come up with I'll come up with something every week for you guys. We've done mostly movies, we've done some literature, so we'll probably be doing that. But let me know, members especially, let me know what you want me to cover every week. Give me some ideas for that, and I will do that for you. Let's see, fan funding here. Thank you again to Jordan for that membership. Thank you to JW for that membership. If you want to super chat me, you can click that super chat. Also, let's look and see if we got any support here. You guys, really appreciate you being here. You support me just by being here every time and by hitting that like button and sharing. I really appreciate you. Shouts out to Jason for that $10 PayPal. Thank you so much. Also, big sponsored stream came in this week. And that was Ethan. Shouts out to, let's see. Oh, Ethan also sent $10 right there on that last stream. And let me look for this other one because we got a big. If you want to sponsor a stream, please do that through PayPal or Cash App. Really appreciate you. And let's see. I'm going to dismiss that ad. Yep. Shouts out to Ethan who drops me, who sponsored a stream this week, and he wants me to do Nightmare Alley if and when you up to it. God bless. Yes, I did the analysis for the same writer as Nightmare Alley when I did the Houdini stream. That was like a year and a half ago. So I'll get to Nightmare Alley. Definitely the film. I'll try to grab the book also. Thanks to Ethan for that sponsorship. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you, sir. You are the best. Thank you. And he also sent $10 that last time for the Rooster. And let's see. I know I got some other ones as time passes. You can support me anytime. You don't have to just do it on here during the stream. Shouts out to Nick who dropped $5. I don't know if I got to that one. I think it was after it was already over. So shouts out to Nick for that $5 on the last one. Shouts out to Evan for that $5 on PayPal. Also, so yeah, there was another one that came in last time after it was over. And shouts out to Buster for that $10 on that last one that came in afterwards. And shouts out to Dan who gave $25 on that last one. Can't thank you enough for tonight's stream. Thank you so much, Dan. Really appreciate you. Also, Kira a while back, I think I gave Kira a shouts out, but she gave $10 for a Spalding Gray impression. That was almost a month ago, but I think I gave her shouts out for that. But you guys, if you want to sponsor a stream, if you want to support, you can always do that. Look at the links provided in the about page or in the descriptions of any of the videos. Make sure when you're watching the video, look down, click down, and look at the description, because for the next one, especially like for HHHH, I wrote a pretty good Dees. I wrote a Dees mini essay analysis as a setup for the movie. So please read those because I think they're pretty good. Hey, shouts out to JG. Shouts out to Jago out there who drops $5. And he says, what if members got a monthly book club so us slow boys get time to read it? Hey, that's interesting. I mean, that's a good thought. The problem with that is that the problem with book club for me is that I tend to do things pretty spur of the moment. Even though I give lots of warning time ahead of time, sometimes I'll change it at the last minute. And also, I read I'm not just saying this for any reason. I'm just saying I read pretty fast, obviously. And I read pretty fast, and I'm a pretty voluminous reader because, number one, it's what what I do for a living. And also, other people, all you guys out there have your jobs. And if somebody's, I can't expect somebody to, I don't want to make anybody do a job to come watch a stream. I don't want to give anybody work to do that. Not that people who do that's bad. People want to do it and they want to participate. Maybe if you guys express that and you want to participate, that'd be great. But the problem is that if you're a bricklayer and you're laying bricks all day and you get home, like, what are you going to do? You're going to be with your family and you're going to be tired as hell. And I can't expect people to, I don't want to give you assignments. So I'm trying to do the work for you, but also in case you've already done it and go through the canon. But if you guys want me to do that, then maybe that would be something to consider for a book club. But just to, I read pretty fast. And so by the time we do the thing, I'm already on to the fourth book or whatever. So, but if you guys want to do that, that's a pretty good idea. So thank you for dropping that. Really appreciate that. Shouts out to Blue Skittle out there who drops $4.99 super chat. Hey, thank you, Blue Skittle. So, no, I didn't mean to drop that. I meant to drop a heart. Come on now. Yeah, I don't know. That was supposed to be a heart. So thank you, Blue Skittle. Appreciate that. So if you want to get it, if you want to check it out, on Wednesday night, I will be going over HHHH by Laurent Binet, which you can read. You can read this in a few hours. I mean, this is a great book. I'm also going to be covering a very, very thick book called The Hangman and His Wife about Heydrich and Lena and Reinhard Heydrich by what's her name, Doherty. And so that's about a 500-page book. And then also some of the other. There's two other biographies of Heydrich that I'll be referencing in that. Shouts out to Mike Def Leppard, who drops $5. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Hey, let me hit that like button. There you go. Let me hit that heart. There you go. I hit that heart. Good this time. And so that's about it, you guys. I think that's it. I hope we go strong into June. Let's end May well. Oh, man, it's been a long month. I was thinking about today. It's not even summer yet, and I was already thinking about how I'm ready for fall. I guess that's the way it goes. But also for the next member stream, I'm going to be reading this poem that I wrote called Twin Flame, which I think you guys, that sounds hokey, but this is a literary channel and I'm a writer. So, and I'm trying to get my book published. If you know a book publisher out there, again, please, if you're a book publisher, someone who publishes, please reach out to me, madmaximalism with 2 X's at gmail.com. I'm trying to publish my book of poems and 2 novels. So, please help me do that. That would be great. That is my goal. That's my goal with all of this, is to publish my book. And I really don't want to self-publish it. I want to get my book published, and even if it's a thin book of poems, because even those, I know you'll appreciate it, and I think you'll like it. It's about, my book of poems is about megalomania and World War II, the Troubles, and Imperial Rome. Personae and megalomania. I think you'll like it. This is not frilly, flowery, rhymed verse from the 19th century or some sort of, mama cried a different kind of tears. I'm not doing performance poetry. So, that's my goal, is to publish that book. That is my goal. That's what I want out of all this. So, maybe you can help me do that if you want. Yeah, it's not slam. Have I played you? Hold on. Let me play you this. Because this is, it's not this. Let me see if I can find this clip. because this is. Have you heard Sam's slam poems? Let me see if I can find Sam's slam poem. Yeah, here it is. Here it is. All right. This is Sam's slam poem, and this is not what my book is, but this is hilarious.
Mama cries a different kind of tears.
So anyway, yeah, that's not what it is. Okay, so that's what I'll be doing soon, and hope you guys will join me for that. I'm also gonna be doing, of course, the Cormac McCarthy Counselor film. I'll be doing that coming up next week, and yeah, it was Sam Hyde. Yeah, that was Sam. So that's about it. Also, our friend Rooks G has killed it on this latest track that he dropped that I played at the beginning of the stream. Our friend Rooks G and his R01 versus Soul Crusher Z9, 5,000 views. That's us, right? That's part of us. I mean, I like to think we contributed to that. So please go to Rooks G. Go to Rooks G and ROOXG. Check out his music on all the platforms. That's our friend. He does our music. He does the music that he lets us use. So yeah. The Counselor has a big scene in the beginning of the script. Well, it alludes to that, and there is a 9mm scene that's alluded to in the film. It's dark. It's Cormac McCarthy, but it's an example of a script that was misused for the film. And this is another example. We've done lots of Ridley Scott. I did the whole Ridley Scott stream, right? And then I did Napoleon. I've done lots of Ridley Scott here. And he directed the film, and it's another example, which are popping up more often now in hindsight, of a Ridley Scott movie where he just didn't seem to know what he had on his hands. And this could have been a fantastic movie, but it ended up, it didn't let the movie breathe. Just like with the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, that movie did do that. And the Ridley Scott movie did not, even though he produced that movie. Isn't that crazy? So yeah. So here we go. Let's play some Rooks G to play us out. Here, here's R01 versus Soul Crusher Z9. I'll put the link in there. Please go to that and like it. Please let Rooks G know in his comments that you came from here. And also, please make sure you leave a comment afterwards. Like and share the stream. Help me get it out there. The Misery stream is doing very well, if you haven't noticed. That one picked up some steam since we did it. And it's doing pretty well. We're doing pretty well here. Help me get to, what are we getting to? 3,300 subs or something like that. That's pretty good. So, love our friends. Let's go out into June with a bang. Let's get out of May. And, was it worth it? Yeah, it's worth it if you're strong enough, right? Let's play us out here with Sting and a cut off his new album. All right, everybody? And I'll see you Wednesday night for the Reinhard Heydrich stream, okay? Let's go. Here we go. And here's the link for Rooks J. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, go to the community tab and look up my recent appearance on Jason Burmis on TNT. That was crazy. I'll also be on Hesher, I think, at the end of this week. Got a weekly thing going here. Check out Boiler Room every Thursday night on Alternate Current Radio. Check me out on Fridays with Hesher. And that recent Burmis stream, the link is in the community tab. Shouts out to Burmis! Burmis! Shouts out to Burmis. We do it live. All right, y'all. Love you. Shouts out to our friend Real John Connor out there who drops $5. Hey, appreciate you, homeboy. Love you so much. Peace. Shouts out to JW right there for that $20 super chat. Hey, thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's awesome.